to this conversation, brought to you by White House Custom Color. I'm Jed Toffer, and today I get to speak with the one and the only Dane Sanders. Hey, brother.
Jedness, it is so good to be here, man.
Oh, this is like top of the heap for me. I'm a little nervous to speak with you.
Oh, you're silly. You're just silly.
What?
We're like friends and brothers, man. We've been friends. It's been what, a million years we've been friends now.
Well,
we're just getting started.
We met at 2009, I think, at Image Explorations. Remember it had something to do with a wolf head that we put in your shower. Does that ring a bell to you?
Yes, it does. I'm still scarred from the experience, but
yeah. Well, I didn't know you. That's how I met you. Is that Kevin Kubota said, "Hey, we should put this terrifying wolf's head. It was a demonic wolf's head. We should do this. Put this in this Dane Sanders guy's his shower." And I was like, "Okay, let's do it." And that's how it happened.
There's two things to notice about that, Jed. First, you need better friends than Kevin Kubota, and second, you might want to give a little bit more thought to these kinds of things. I mean, what if I was raised by wolves and that was my mom? Like, there's so much that could have gone sideways in that move.
You know, I totally. My thing is, I trusted him completely in that
First
moment.
mistake,
and I was really lucky that you are the good man that you are. Honestly, I'm a little nervous to speak with you. One of my best friends was a therapist, and I always thought that he was analyzing me. So we'd joke about it, and he'd say that he wasn't, but I think he was, just by force of habit. And I feel like you're so experienced with podcasts and podcasting, and you're so very, very good at conversing in general that you'll be critiquing me in your mind in real time this whole time. Like, that's what's going through my brain.
So if I was silent for a long time,
the dead air is terrifying. You're easily one of the very best conversationalists I've ever met. You're a great listener and thinker.
Hey, can we just agree? Like, let's lower the bar. This is ridiculous.
Come on. No, you're authentic. And you know what? You're really gifted at helping people release their tears. And why do you think that is? I'd like to know why you're so good at getting people to bawl their eyes out. I've seen it time and time again. What's the deal? What do you think of it? I know what I think of it. What do you think of it?
Well, I've logged some tears in my life, and birds of a feather. I think there's something to be said for folks who've been super generous to me and have created kind of space for realness. I mean, life's hard, man. And I just think that in the world we're living in, it's speeding up so quickly. It just seems like there's not as much space as there used to be fully human. And emotions are just kind of part of life, I think. It's a gift for me when people have just built a little bit of space or context for me to be real. And if in that realness I'm angry or sad or really happy or laughing or like the whole, I don't know if people just cry. Like, maybe they're crying around me because, they're, I'm a horrible conversationalist and they're just trying to end it. That's very possible.
They just want to get out.
But, I'm hoping that there's other parts to the conversation. Like I one of my favorite things is to be with somebody in the full spectrum. You think of, we're in the creative field, so you have a full spectrum of things. Like, I like a broad dynamic range. And if you can be like gut wrenching, laughing, and then crying, and like, that's the full conversation. You know what I'm saying?
I certainly don't mean to imply that you're like this Georgie Porgy that makes everybody cry every time. No, that's certainly not the case. But you have a gift. You are able to get to the heart of the matter fairly quickly, and people feel this ability, or maybe this safety to open up to you. Right? I mean, that's how I've experienced you. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself.
No, I like that idea. I think it's hard. It's fun. Like, you and I've talked off air about this organization that I love so much, this thing called Alpha. And Alpha, for those who are unfamiliar, is this, it's a faith-based organization, actually started in London, England. And Christians aren't famous for creating safe space for people. It's tragic because
No.
I mean that's what we're supposed to be about.
They're famous
But,
for doing the opposite, actually.
Other thing, right. People feeling shame or badness or whatever. And one of the reasons why I like Alpha so much is because that's all they do. They just create like a safe space for people to be real and honest and just kind of get the last word where they're not being talked at.
Yes.
People are just with each other.
Right.
And that, I mean, making people feel safe is such a big part of that. But it's funny. It reminds me a little bit. Years ago, I did. I wrote a couple books, and I was traveling quite a bit for an extended season. And I would do these at the end of every like a workshop or whatever. I do these things called faith and photography. Kind of horrible name. I need to work on my branding.
I think I remember that actually.
It was really fun because it was totally optional. Didn't have to participate, and people would show up. And the point was like, hey, even if you're an atheist, it has a huge, the non-physical parts of our life is affecting our lives all the time, like what we think, our worldview and that sort of thing. And we get together and we didn't really have a huge agenda apart from just sharing like, hey, so what is your tradition and what, why do you believe what you believe? And that was the whole point of it. It was way before I had ever heard of Alpha, and Alpha does a much better job. But I remember I was in Connecticut and I was with, do you know Seshu up in Connecticut? He's a old time photographer, been around for a while.
The name sounds very familiar, actually.
Yeah, I think you might see him online quite a bit. Great guy. Well, he came to the workshop in Boston, and we were in this conversation. I went to him first and said, "Okay, so Seshu, what's your faith tradition?" He goes, "Well, I'm a Hindu." And I said, "Oh, great. Well, what does that mean to you, man?" And he goes, "Well, I have great parents, and I love my parents, and they raised me really, really well. And they're Hindu, so I'm Hindu. And if they were Catholic, I'd probably be Catholic." Like he just was kind of straight about it. And I was like, that makes sense to me.
Right.
And I said, "Thanks for sharing." And then went to the next guy, and we'll call him Frank. His name really wasn't Frank, but we'll call him Frank. And I said, "So Frank, what's your tradition?" He goes, "I'm a Christian." And I said, "Oh, well, what does that mean to you?" And he said, "Well, I just believe what comes around goes around, and energy, and like this, what you do in this life really affects the next life." And all of a sudden, Seishu breaks into the conversation. He goes, "Oh, Frank, I think you're a Hindu." It was awesome.
That's fantastic. I was just thinking to myself, wait a second, I think you got the Hindu mixed up there. That's fantastic. I do. I think I remember you doing those.
Yeah, they were fun. I wish I did them more because I just think life, especially for these boutique business owners, man, where you gotta fight for space like that, don't you think? Like it just seems like it's getting in shorter and shorter supply these days.
Now more
despite
than ever.
all the activities.
Now,
don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now more than ever. And things like social media are just exasperating, in my opinion, the situation and media in general. I
and the pace too. Like you kind of have to slow down a little bit if you're going to feel safe. And if you're running at breakneck speed, or you're constantly editing or curating everything you're putting out, and I do that. I mean, it's kind of built into what a social media post is, but it doesn't. I don't feel the fullness of who I am in those spaces. I need other space. Maybe I'm just needy though, Jed. That's highly possible. It might just be me and my neediness.
Yeah, you and your neediness. I don't know if I'd go that route. Well, I'll let you have that one though.
Okay.
You know what? Your topic, because everyone's been choosing their topics here, was how business owners get paralyzed by what's next, and I love it. Because it plays on one of my biggest issues myself, which is fear, and how I didn't always think this. I came to learn this, I believe, through our own business, was that fear can motivate or paralyze. Is that fair to say for you?
Oh yeah. I remember for a while I was teaching up at a liberal arts college up in Santa Barbara, California, a place called Westmont College, and the basketball coach there is amazing. He took all of these underperforming guys and put them in a system, and just ran a Princeton offense and just did they just did so well. And I remember asking him one time, like, what what was it? How did he get such an amazing performance out of these young athletes? And he would say, fear. That he was real about it. He was like, yeah, they're terrified of me. But I appreciated his honesty, but it speaks to what you're saying. Like, fear really can fuel a lot of productivity and activity and running around and chasing stuff. I don't think it's the best fuel. I think it's pretty low grade fuel, but it's a fuel. But I think the other side of it's true as well. I mean, I know for me, you get the right ingredients and you add a little fear. I'm about as paralyzed as I could imagine. I just freeze up once I pass a certain threshold.
Like a puddle of mush on the ground.
Yeah.
Is what I can turn into.
Yeah, and that's what's so tough about the moment we live in is there's never been so much stuff. Like, we have just access to stuff, ideas, workshops, conferences, insights, opinions, comments, reviews. Like, it just goes on and on and on and on. And for me, it's not like I'm in scarcity and I can't figure out like what are my options. I have so many options. I'm peaking all the time. It's like I don't know how to discern.
An abundance of interactivity and options along those lines. Yeah. And so is it a big piece of it separating the wheat from the chaff, or what do you do?
Well, that's the right question, right? Okay, so all these options they just are. Like, it's not like they're going away anytime soon.
No.
Unless people make the decision to build constraint into their life, where they actually they put a cap on the amount of kind of stuff coming their way. And, the power of marketing and all these different things that are happening these days, like, if you don't do that, you're not going to be running your life. Your life's going to be running you. It's just an onslaught. And I mean, you're seeing this all the time now. You're seeing this reaction now, just on a consumer level, where people are talking about, how do I limit my social media, or how, I'm constantly connected, but I'm actually in very few conversations, like real conversations with people, and like this. And there's a great little book called The Tech Wise Family that this guy named Andy Crouch wrote, where it was so clever. Like, he basically just said, look, technology is amazing. It's this incredibly powerful thing, but let's put it in its proper place. Let's constrain our lives. So he invites people to think about, what would it look like to constrain like screens in such a way that 1 hour a day, like nothing, like abstinence from screens, and then 1 day a week, abstinence from screens, and then 1 week a year, maybe 2, abstinence from screens, like full on, like not available kind of thing. Not because it's bad, but because it's overwhelming. And that has this kind of grounding effect. And people are like, oh my gosh, this is revolutionary. And it is in our day, because the idea of taking a rest, it's tough. But otherwise, yeah, I pity myself, and I pity all business owners in particular, where it's like, with all these options, not just technology and communication messages, but with all these options at our disposal, how do you pick? How do you decide what that is? And I think part of it is kind of getting perspective, kind of rising above and looking over the whole of the things that are coming your way, maybe getting clear on what are the questions you're actually trying to answer with all these options. And just make sure that you're controlling that conversation. You're deciding, okay, so I can actually, like a spigot, I can turn kind of the flow of ideas on and off. But oftentimes I think the onslaught isn't just paralyzing. It actually, it puts me in a place of almost like a daydream. Like, I'm just kind of daydreaming through life sometimes, and sleepwalking maybe. And when I'm in that kind of state of automatic, I'm not very trustworthy or helpful as a business owner, because all of a sudden, like, all these things coming at me, I'm getting sold all the time. Even if it's a B2B, business to business kind of offering that could really help my business, I'm not even in a place where I could take advantage of it. So I think step one is kind of get some perspective, get some space, some air, to get really clear on what is the question that needs answering, what's going to be the most helpful thing. And then number 3, and this is the good news, once you're clear on those first 2, get right to the point and get like the number one numero uno solution for what you want. And it's never been easier to get access to it once you know what you're looking for. Like, I love what you're doing here, Jed, with this podcast. This is one of my favorite ideas you've ever had. You've had a few of them that I like a lot. And what did you do? You got this. You do this all the time. You somehow have this kind of ability to get clear on, okay, what am I doing? You keep it simple. What am I doing? And who could I reach out to get what I need to get that accomplished? And then you get it done. And it sounds simple, but it's just really hard because all the while you have these rogue waves coming at you telling you, oh no, I think you need to do this way, or I think this is the right way to do it. But that's what occurs to me. How do you deal with the onslaught of paralysis by analysis, all of it coming your way?
I have to step away from it. I have to. I don't know any other way to do it. Like you. So your first step is to gain a perspective. Is that right?
Yeah.
So when I say I step away from it, I'm like you were talking about the screen abstinence, and my little screen addict is freaking out inside of me when you're like an hour a day of screens. I'm like, well, then I can't binge Stranger Things anymore, and that stinks. Or I can't even watch a full feature film because they are generally an hour and a half to 2.5 hours long, and I only have an hour a day, and I'm not going to split it over 2 days.
Oh no, forgive me. I'm not saying you only get a screen an hour a day. I mean, for an hour a day, there's no screen. So you still have 23 hours, man. You got plenty of time. You got plenty of time. He's like, the bar is so low here. Like, he's literally just saying, try not to look at a screen for an hour.
I'm so sorry. See, my little...
I put you in a state. I put you in a state of duress. This is horrible. I'm a bad friend, Jed. I'm a bad friend.
My scared little boy heard it differently. I'm hearing my mom and dad say, you get an hour of TV and then it's, no more. So,
yeah.
All right.
Those are funny days.
That helps me a little bit. But what I'm getting at is I agree with the perspective thing 100%. For me, it's absolutely necessary to put myself in a position where I can gain some perspective. And so for me, that generally involves being grateful. Is that being grateful, being thankful, like stopping whatever I'm doing, looking around, and considering things like my family, my children, that I have a home that's heated, that I can go to the store. This just happened yesterday because I took my daughter to the store, and it hit me that here I am walking around in this store that's wonderful, and you know what? I wanted a steak. So you know what I did? I bought a steak. You know what I mean? And it struck me that, we've been to a few different places in the world, some of them tremendously impoverished. Yeah. You can't do what I did yesterday in a lot of these places. Yeah. And the majority of the people living in some of those areas, it doesn't even enter their mind to be able to do something like that. And here I am just waltzing around in this store, and there, my biggest question is, well, do I want a ribeye or do I want a fillet? Which one am I going to do? And it struck me then that I am in this position to even be able to do this, and how incredible it is, and really to a degree, there's a responsibility there. And for me, part of that responsibility involves the act of checking myself and gaining that perspective on a regular basis, because you can come out of it so fast.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's not an event, is it? It's a habit.
It's absolutely a habit. Yeah, perfect. It's not an event. That's a fantastic way to put it, I think. A habit, yes.
Yeah.
Because you can come out of it, and then it's as if it never happened. You know what I mean? I find myself sitting at a restaurant, and my steak comes back maybe a little bit over medium, and I'm like, hey, I ordered this medium rare, and I hardly see any pink. And I'm thinking about sending, and what in the world am I really thinking there in those situations? Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
So I like that first step.
Yeah.
All that to say, I really like that first step because I can say from experience that it is absolutely necessary for me to do that first.
You know what's funny though is let's say the stuff coming your way has already got you, like, because there's another option too. Like I have a hunch there's some folks listening who are like, yeah, that sounds great. If I had stopped yesterday afternoon, like, and gotten that space, that would have been great. But I'm already hooked. Like I am just undone about X, Y, or Z. And as that's coming my way, what do I do then? And that's actually more real for me, because when I have enough, sanity to get perspective, I was fine. It's more like when I'm like scared, like in your case, walking around the grocery store, like if you actually are starving, like you just haven't eaten in a couple days and you're like, oh, I'm starving. It's a different proposition. You've gone from a first world problem to a third world problem, and it feels very, very different. Mm-hmm. And when I'm kind of overwhelmed with my feelings in that sense, it's interesting. My wife and I talk about this all the time. Tammy, we talk about the hypothalamus hijack. So like, if you picture the back of your neck, the stem of your brain, that's where all of my feeling happens. And then above that, theoretically, all my thinking happens, so my neocortex. But if I have surges of overwhelm, my hypothalamus takes over. It just kind of grabs hold of, I don't get the chance to think about in a meta kind of way where I have perspective and I can have a chance to say that I'm grateful. I'm undone. I see red if I'm angry, or I feel desperate. I feel hopeless. And when I get hijacked like that, according to the neuroscience I've read, you're kind of screwed. Like you can't really stop that like on a dime. But what you can do is you can slow the train down. So like, again, this is one of the reasons why I love what you're doing with the show, is because just listening to this show is a chance for people to slow the train down. They're just they can be overwhelmed. They don't know what to do. Well, I don't know. I'm going to listen to Jed, because when Jed talks, I slow down just a smidge. And Jed, I'm not lying. Like, you do this with me in life. That's why every time I get anywhere near a state you're in, I call you and say, can we hang out, and bring Vicky, because I'll like you even more if that happens. So, but that's what I need to do, is I need to either stop and get space, or if I can't stop, at least slow down. But I need to create some options for me. Otherwise, I'm just not a very good business owner or a very creative person.
So it's an act of will, yes?
Will and body, and like I need all of it. I need to build it into my system. So I need a set of habits. Sometimes I need an interruption, something like just an intervention, Sometimes I need an event. Sometimes I just need community who care enough to check in and give me feedback that I'm kind of a nightmare right now. Like, all those things are great options, but it left to my own devices in the world that we're in right now. You mentioned binging, Stranger Things. Like, why would I stop at Stranger Things? There's so much to binge right now.
Oh my goodness.
There's so
fantastic, and terrifying and true all at the same time.
At the same time, like it's extraordinary.
So
the moment that we're in.
That leads me to what I've been thinking as you've been saying some of this stuff. How important are other people, whether it's fellow business owners or friends or mentors or family? How important is that? How necessary is that?
Life and death, like cardiac arrest, serious. I actually think even like the most significant introvert you could ever, if that's you at home right now, you have an advantage over a lot of people, you introverts out there, but this isn't about introvert extrovert. I just think we are practicing as a society and culture how to be extraordinarily lonely. Wow. And humans weren't meant to be alone. Even though we're crazy connected, we've never been more lonely. We're practiced at being lonely. I can spend whole days, I'm picking on technology again, but I can spend whole days where I think I've connected to people, but if I look at my watch, it says I've done 800 steps, and that was just to go to the toilet a couple times. Like, I've not moved. And I've not. If you looked, if a Martian came down and looked at my life, they'd say, "Well, actually, you sat in a chair and stared at a square, and pressed some buttons all day," and but that's our life. That's how we live. So if we don't have real people who know us, who check in with us, who are real with us, who can not just kind of, flatter or vilify, but actually can be real with each other, I just don't know how we're human. I don't know how we do it. So what's great, though, I think, especially for boutique businesses, and that's a lot of the folks that connect here, and coming from the photo world, and we have a tremendous opportunity to kind of go old school, go village like, and just decide who are your people, and write them down on a piece of paper and double check that they think you're their people, and just get after it. Now, for me, the gift back in the wolf head days when you tear the crap out of me, I knew pretty quick you were my people, man. Even Kevin Kubota, I even love him. Like
even that guy.
But even that guy. And what's great is, now we have, better part of a decade under our belt, and we're just getting started. But man, like we've also had in that decade, amazing moments and hard moments. And, when I think about you and Vic in Nepal and a crazy time, that was just
that was
terrifying.
That was
and yeah. And here we are, you're still, you're back at the grocery store buying steaks. Like how
and that did not get lost on me. It's interesting though. It's to connect the two. That was such a paralyzing time. And yet it was, I believe, in large part due to the support of so many other people that we reached out to and that reached out to us that helped us get through all that. We wouldn't have been able to do it alone. There's no question. We needed other people.
Yeah. It's not, I think if people view others as optional, that's a problem. And when I would say others, like I just mean, it's got to be more than just, your followers. I remember early Twitter days, this is hilarious. And this is a G-rated show, so I will not use I like cussing a lot. I just like to be very careful in the moment as to where and when I use it. And they're so valuable to me. I want to save them for special moments. But I remember I was so excited about the Twitter, and I got on early and I had some people checking me out, and I had followers. It was awesome. And Facebook said I couldn't have any
friends,
more.
That was the bar.
Friends anymore. And oh man, that was Kenny beat all of us. And you guys don't know him, poor Kenny. Long sorry for all the inside jokes, friends. But so all of a sudden I come home from a conference or something, and I kept dropping to Tammy, like, Tam, you should sign up for Twitter. Twitter's awesome. Twitter's incredible. And she was like, yeah, whatever. She just blew it off. And one day I decided, well, I'll just sign her up. I signed her up. I wrote a bunch of people, and I got her some she had 100 people following her on Twitter. She never even opened Twitter. You can actually, if you guys want at home right now, you can go to / Tammy Sanders, TAMI. You'll see a handful of folks still there. Tammy's never opened
it, much less tweeted.
No, not even. No. But the reason actually you shouldn't go do that is because when I came back from the thing and I told her that I had done this, she looked at me, and Tammy is not a cusser, but Tammy looked at me and she said, Dana, which is my real name. She said, Dana, I'm your wife, not your effing fan. And she did not use the word effing either. And I had this, she denies that she said this. I promise you this happened. And I had this moment of clarity where I went, if I only know somebody because we connect when I get a Facebook notice that says it's their birthday, they are not my friend. And it's not a bad thing. But if I think they're going to show up at my funeral and take care of my kids if I get sick, I'm crazy. And so who are my people? I got to figure that stuff out, And I don't know. Does that connect to you? Does that resonate?
Goodness. Yeah. One of my friends, one of my real friends, probably my best friend really, what we grew up with, has always done it really well, in my opinion. He says, I have my friends and I have acquaintances. And he said,
Yeah.
I have about 6 friends.
That's a big number. That's a big number.
Well, I mean, he might have different metrics for his friends and acquaintances, but
sure.
he's
No, it's inner circle.
yes,
It's his,
yes. And
Yeah,
and
right.
I think there are some pluses to that, because for him, if you're a friend, that means something, like to call all these people our friends, really, on one hand, like you said, it's not bad, but really, on one hand, what it does is it lessens our friends. It lessens what that means, right? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like a real relationship with somebody. It's the whole Seinfeld breathtaking episode, and for lack of a better term, Elaine gets called breathtaking by this guy, and then he calls something else breathtaking that's not breathtaking, and all the credibility of the word breathtaking has been zapped.
God.
So yeah, but friends, followers, likes, loves now, the bar has been raised by the heart.
Yeah.
And you look down and
Yeah.
you say, oh, well, now I have loves. Well, I hope I had more reactions that are hearts than I had that were likes. I mean, it gets in your brain, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It is in your brain. It's dopamine. It's just dopamine hits. And I heard Seth Godin talk recently about, you can go for dopamine or you can go for serotonin. And serotonin is actually low grade, slow. It's the kind of drug that actually, the more you get of it, the slower you go and the more life gets better. Whereas dopamine, it's more like every time you get a hit, you'll never get as strong a hit as you had, and you're perpetually looking for that early high. So it's how I'm chasing the dopamine rush. And every time, every technology is built to promote dopamine. There's not a lot of technologies out there saying, we're giving this to you so you can slow down and be more present and less distracted.
It's like crack and weed.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't have experience along those lines, so don't.
The last time I smoked crack, let me think about that.
From what I have read and seen on the television programs, like one is like a now and a bam. And so what you're saying essentially is that I should be going for the serotonin.
Well, I think humans need serotonin. There's no I just think it's supply and demand. I don't want to make any of these things bad, although I think crack probably
crack
is.
is bad, for the record.
And it might be that weed's bad too. I don't know how it's going to play out, but my sense is that from a supply and demand perspective, there's no shortage of dopamine inducing opportunities. And from a supply and demand perspective, there is a massive shortage of serotonin opportunities. And that's why you got to be intentional, because someone else is running the show. If you're not conscious, if you don't kind of get above the fray. I mean, that's honestly, it's why we did the conference. We have this thing called Fastermind. We do this conference once a year in January, and it's not massive. It's not thousands. It's like 100 people, and it's meant to be like the kind of thing that you don't go to once. This is you're going to start your year this way. It's a rhythm. I'm going to go here, get some perspective, get reminded about reality, a little less on the hype and a little bit more on the real. And if you walk out of this conference with one thing that you need to go do, and it's actually the thing, we're going to call that a win. That's what the next thing is. You know what? Yeah, well, it's so fun. It's so funny because the bar is kind of low. It's like, really? I only have to get one thing and we're going to call this a win? But honestly, I can't tell you how many conferences I've been to in my life where I have 1,000 things and none of them get done. And they're good things. But I don't need that. I just need one thing at a time, man.
I can't tell you how many people I sit down with at a show or whatever, and they have their bag and it's full of, I don't know, 200 or 300 brochures and whatnot. And I think, and we talk about it, and I say, hey, you know what you should do? Pull 3 of those out of there and throw the rest of the bag away. And people can't do it. And yet I know, for the most part, people are going to take those bags home. Maybe they'll sort through it. Maybe they won't. But the point is, pick a few things and just focus on those. And that is a huge win.
Yeah. 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 I think three is like the max that I could.
Yeah. Compared to one, three's a lot. Yeah.
For me. Yeah. I mean, again, maybe there's super performers out there, but I've been amazed at how much I've done in my life when I've done, like my pace is so much faster when I pick fewer things. Mm-hmm. It's just amazing. It's like RAM. Like if I have 18 apps open, everything slows down. But if I have one, I tend to get moving along, even if it feels like I should be doing other things. That whole should, comparison, envy, all that stuff, man. And the contrast, I guess, where I want to spend more time is just on the positive. It's like, man, my friends who slow the train down, who do one thing at a time, even though life gets complicated and there's a lot of potential interruptions, and don't they just look like they're flourishing, like that they have a more full life? I don't know. That's why are we doing the business thing for any other reason but then to have a full life? I don't know. Otherwise, if we're just doing it for the money, we probably should just work for the man somewhere, or Yep.
That's a good point. It sounds as though you have mentioned several potential solutions for when a business owner in particular gets paralyzed by what's next. The perspective, community, and just this last one of how would you categorize what we just talked about specifically?
Yeah, there's probably a lot of ways to describe it. Like it's slowing down, but it's like bigger picture. It's really taking responsibility. Like it's almost like saying, okay, whatever. No, I don't want to get all like heady about it. It's not meant to be that way. It's just more like, look, for whatever reason, you and I got born in this era, and our kids might have a more complex era than we have right now. That's their burden to bear. And people before us might have had a different one, but we have this one. So how do I take responsibility for this high supply of, dopamine kind of stuff and low supply of that and of the serotonin stuff? And I that in my mind, that just tells me what to go do. That gives me my marching orders. I need to build into my life analog things with human beings who know me and know me enough to, without me saying a lot of words, can kind of tell if I need somebody to reach out and can trust that I'm paying attention to them too. That I can kind of step away. And it's so interesting. My two favorite atheists I read and listen to these days. One is a book by a guy named Ryan Holiday. It's called Ego is the Enemy. And he wrote another book called The Obstacle Is the Way. And they're great books. In fact, Ego is the Enemy. It's funny. I mentioned I'm a Christian. I think Ego is the Enemy is the best case for Christianity written by an atheist. It's so good. It's so good. But the other one I'm into right now is a book by Russell Brand, the English comedian, and it's on recovery. It's a 12-step program book that his life was a nightmare, and I think he's like right now around 14 or 15 years sober of a lot of
working it.
A lot. Yeah. But the guy's is brilliant. He's so articulate and so hilarious. And, but I also love too, that he's noticing his need for power that's greater than himself to navigate life. And that makes sense to me. And that the ego, which is being, held up in this age we're in, is held up so high, it's so celebrated, that there's an invitation to wake up and say, that's not good for me as a human being. I need more than just my ego. And friends are so good at helping us get off our egos, man. Like
that's so true.
Real friends are. It's helpful.
I think that to a degree we want to do that, and it's certainly easier to do that with others, isn't it? We don't always do it well.
Yes.
Right? I don't always do it well. Let me put it that way.
I don't either.
But it's something that it can come very naturally to knock your friend off his high horse. There's no question. And when that's done well, I think it's an absolute blessing.
Well, the game is love, man. That's what the only game that matters is love. And this is the part of love that isn't just kind of like whimsy, flimsy. We used to Georgie Porgy earlier. Like I'm talking like real love, the kind of love that like shows up when it's freaking hard. And also that because you showed up when it was hard, when it's not hard, you're having a beer and you're laughing and you're together in a way that is reserved exclusively for superhumans who have friendship that is real. And the more I'm around, that's all I want to spend my time doing is that. And then I forget and I act like a Dumbo but then I wake up and I go again and try to build up more of my life. Like that's the ebb and flow. But the people that flourish the most, man, they just are people who they pour their creativity for the sake of love. They pour their business acumen for the sake of love. They leverage their relationships. They leverage everything around them for the sake of this bigger game. And I think the tragedy of the moment we're in is the invitation is so big to play the smallest of games around. And I don't anyone is going to wake up and go, I'm so glad I spent my life that way, where I just responded to everybody's request of me and never paid attention to the people that I love the most.
I was super engaged on Instagram. Responded individually, individual comment response to every person, so that my comments went up. Wow, I made it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so easy to get cynical quick, but I get why. I get why.
Don't get me wrong. I wasn't saying that because I read about it somewhere.
Yeah.
I really that's the dope. Me and dopamine have a pretty tight relationship. I should have the analogy I should have used. Other than crack, was McDonald's or a drawn out Italian feast. That's
there you go.
That's the one I can relate.
That's it. It's Babette's Feast or Del Taco, man, and
Big Mac value meal, supersized.
Yeah. Or even if you happen to be in the Big Mac value meal, lineup at drive-through right now, it's late and you got kids screaming and you just had a rough week and you're listening to this podcast and that's where you're at. First of all, grace on you. Grace on you. Like you just need to start there. Grace on you. But number two, even if you get the Big Mac with
patties,
2 all beef patty, special sauce, less the cheese, chickens, or whatever onions on a sesame seed bun, whatever that is for you, that your version of that, at the very least, slow down enough to enjoy the sizzle. Just like I can gobble up a steak too quick sometimes and not get the value. Like slow the train down, and that you're going to get a lot further than you think.
Jim Gaffigan was right about the fries. Though you can't wait too long to eat those fries. You got about 7 good minutes. You know what I mean?
I can defer to the expert on this
I'm
one.
sorry
That's
that
good.
I'm the expert, but unfortunately that's probably true. Hey, do one thing before we go. Can you where do I go to find Fastermind? Is it fastermind.co, right? And
.co, yep. As in, like co-oping and like co-op, like so we're together on this whole deal. So yeah, Fastermind, like mastermind, but a little faster, fastermind.co. And Dane Sanders, you Google that, it'll show up pretty quick. So that's an easy way to find that stuff too, whatever's easiest. But I would say that it's not for everybody. Like Fastermind is, I get that for whatever reason, different places people are in for other kinds of things. But if folks are listening and they're like, yeah, I'd like to start someplace, maybe start my year a certain kind of way, give us a try. I have a hunch there'll be some good things for you in that. And at the very least, just go to the site. There's some fun goodies there for folks that to just dip their toe if coming to Southern California in January is too much
timing
fun
of it
right now.
couldn't be better, honestly, for so many different reasons.
Thanks, man. Hey, Jed, I am so glad that you do this. I am so glad. I'm glad the White House is behind it. I love White House.
Yeah.
I just think this is Seth Godin talks about making a ruckus. This is the right kind of ruckus, man. And I'm so glad that you exist on the planet and that you are my friend.
Ways,
so
brother.
thank you.
I really appreciate your time. And I look forward to speaking with you again, both here on the interwaves as well as in person.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Jed.